Hey, Tim with Perkins Roofing here, and today we're going to talk about the different kinds of flat roofs that are being installed right now and some of their pros and cons. And so generally a flat roof is defined as a roof that has a 2-on-12 or less slope. And right now there's two primary types of flat roofs that we're installing. We have right here our single-ply, and we have right here our asphaltic built-up roof. So the built-up roofs are all asphalt based. They used to be installed with one of these bad boys, the tar kettle here back in the day. There are still people who do a tar kettle hot mop method, but nowadays we have some safer install types. For instance, we have our good old torch here for our torch applied method. See, this is a torch cap sheet here. And then behind me here, you can see this film wrapped around these. This is for a self-adhered method of install, where you pull the plastic off the back, and then you can see that's asphalt right there. It'll stick to the other piece of asphalt. It's like you put two sticky pieces together. So that's our self-adhered method. So we've got, for built-up roofs, our tar kettle for hot mop, our torch for our open flame torch method, and we have our self-adhered. Now, to compare against our old school asphalt built-up roof method, we have our newer school single-ply, which this right here is TPO single-ply, and this is more like a rubberized plastic type of roof rather than the asphaltic granulated. And so those are going to be our two primary types of flat roofs that we're going to be comparing. We're going to start with talking about some of the pros and cons of built-up roofing in general. Some of the pros are that built-up is multiple plies. That's why it's called built-up, because you're building up multiple layers of roofing. So when you have multiple plies, whether it's 2-ply, 3-ply, 4-ply, ply is a layer. So that's how many layers of roofing you have. And the more layers of roofing generally means more durability, especially because each layer is a certain thickness of millage. So depending on the millage and how many layers, you are going to have a more durable roof. Also for pros, the roof life of a built-up roof is generally around 15 to 30 years. That's why it's such a wide range. 15 to 30 is just depending on how many plies. The more plies and the more millage generally means that the longer roof life you're going to get. So it's going to be more durable to punctures and to having maintenance or leak issues, and also the roof itself should last longer. And lastly, one of the pros of a built-up roof is that you have a 4-foot roll rather than a TPO roll, which is the standard is 10 feet. They have the half rolls that are 5 feet as well, but it's easier to work in tight areas with those smaller rolls, and it's usually you get a better seal if you're working in tight areas with an asphaltic roofing system rather than using a thermoplastic roofing system or a single-ply. Now, some of the cons for built-up is it's not as pretty. So you're gonna have roof cement, tar on the walls, and that stuff gets everywhere, especially if you step in it. You can track it and it's gonna get everywhere. So between the tar and just the look of asphaltic roofing, it's not as pretty as the single-ply when you look at like a thermoplastic roofing. Also, another con is about the looks, aesthetics, and how that affects it is that you're not going to get the same reflectivity. So a TPO or single-ply system that's white, is gloss white, it's going to reflect more of the sun's rays back, unless you get like a special cap sheet like the Polyglass Polyfresco cap sheet. That one also has an SRI. I don't know if it matches TPO or if it's higher or lower off the top of my head, but it's pretty close. You can look at the SRIs online. And then also a con of built-up roofing is ponding water. Ponding water will damage the granules, and the granules will be like moved and come off of the cap sheet if you have ponding water. And if you have too much heavy ponding water, it's possible it can come in through the seams, especially if you have a self-adhered system. If you didn't torch or hot mop and you have a self-adhered and then you have ponding water on those seams before the self-adhered seams can cure, because usually self-adhered takes about 30 days to fully cure in the sun, then you can have some water intrusion issues. So you have to be careful about ponding water, especially on self-adhered built-up systems. And you want to have slope with built-up. It's better to have a little bit of slope towards the drains. And by code in Miami-Dade and high-velocity hurricane zone now, you need to have on a re-roof an 1/8 inch slope minimum, and on a new construction you need a minimum 1/4 inch slope toward any drainage or towards the ends of the roof. Also, another con about built-up roofing is it's not as pliable or workable as TPO, and it's also generally more expensive unless you're doing the bare minimum built up, like 2 or 3 plies. If you're gonna have 3-4 plies and tapered insulation and the whole 9, then it's gonna usually be a little bit more expensive per square foot than doing a single ply system. Now we're gonna talk a little bit about single ply. And when it comes to single ply, we have 2 main membranes that we're using in South Florida. We don't really use EPDM down here. What we do use is TPO and PVC. TPO is the standard single ply that you see most of the time. PVC is more expensive. The special use for PVC would be for restaurants and whatnot, because the PVC, or restaurants, factories, industrial places, places with machinery, because PVC is resistant against the chemical output of places like that, like grease coming from restaurant stacks. So that's why you would use PVC rather than TPO. Besides that, as far as like millage and how long they're gonna last, there's not really much of a reason. You can upgrade your TPO or upgrade your PVC to higher millages if you want longer warranties. So the pros of single ply are going to be that single ply is ponding water resistant. So the TPO and the PVC, that's okay for the water to sit on top of it. Like on the BUR, like we were saying, it's going to move the granules and shift the granules and affect the paper. The TPO, the rubberized plastic that the TPO and the PVC are, they're not going to be affected by ponding water. The water's going to sit on there and it's not going to damage the waterproofing membrane at all. Another pro is that the roof life is kind of more standard and uniform. The average roof life of a single ply is 20 to 25 years. So it may not last as long as a built-up roof, but it also won't last as short as a built-up roof. It's not as variable based on how many plies and how many additions and options and stuff you're going to put on it. Other pros of single ply is that it's better in large areas. So like warehouses, industrial buildings, stuff like that. Condominiums with open areas that aren't all cut up are nice for TPO because you have 10-foot rolls. So with those big rolls, it's easier and faster to lay it out. It also looks better. It has like that gloss white look, so you're gonna have better utilities savings, and it just looks better from the sky view. Cons of single ply are gonna be that it's not as durable physically to punctures. It's very easy to puncture single ply. I see screw holes and stuff like that, little pinholes in TPO roofs and PVC roofs all the time. AC mechanics go on the roof, they drop a screw, they step into it, it punctures right through. Built-up roofs are more durable to that type of puncture. I do recommend, if you have areas where people are going to be working, ACs and stuff like that on the roof, that you put walk pads. So you can put walk pads on top of TPO or PVC, but because it's single ply, one layer, one ply, it's not going to be as durable to punctures or little holes and stuff that can get into the roof. And the next con is that bad welds will leak easier and faster than if you have like seam issues on a built-up roof, because obviously you only have one layer. So if you have a bad weld where you have 2 pieces like this of TPO and then one is open, water's going to come straight through and then get down under the roof. If you have a built-up roof, you have layer upon layer upon layer upon layer. So if you have one bad weld at the top, the water's going to come here, but then you have other layers staggered underneath. So it's going to be a lot tougher for that water to find a spot where it can then get into the building and get into the structure. It may get in over time or make a bigger hole where it'll get in faster and then you'll finally see it, but it takes a lot longer to work through if you do have a leak in a built-up roof. So single ply and asphaltic roofing systems both have pros and cons. They work better in different scenarios or worse in different scenarios. So ask your roofer what they prefer, what they think is the best option for your particular situation, and what they are trained best at, and let them roll on what they believe is the best solution for the problem.